The most valuable NBA player of all time isn't Michael Jordan or LeBron James. Well, you know that Jordan and LeBron are the two GOATs of the basketball world. They're not as valuable as you think they are. No, we're not talking about the kind of value that wins the most valuable player trophy. Instead, we're talking about the kind of value that turns $1 million franchise into a $1 billion organization. And the most valuable player is a 6'2" skinny point guard named Stephen Curry, who helped transform the Golden State Warriors into a massive sports empire. But what's the secret behind Curry's value? Well, let's swish ourselves into the story of how Stephen Curry became the most valuable player ever. Chapter 1: The Golden State Struggles. There was a time in history when the Golden State Warriors was the last franchise you'd ever want to be playing for if you were an NBA player. This team didn't have the most successful history as far as winning NBA championships. Of course, they won the championship in 1975, but they eventually fell into mediocrity during the 80s and 90s. People loved the Warriors during the early 90s, though, because that squad had one of the most entertaining offenses in the league. Relying on the running and gunning of Chris Mullin, Tim Hardaway, and Mitch Richmond, the Warriors were the most entertaining group to watch. Run TMC, the name of that trio, was one of the first groups of stars who paved the way to the faster pace we see in today's modern era. But that trio never won a championship. In fact, the Warriors weren't particularly successful during the 90s up to the 2000s. That was when the franchise entered into a dreaded dark age, when they failed to make the playoffs from 1995 to 2006. The Warriors couldn't even win at least 40 games during those 11 straight years of missing the playoffs. It wasn't as if the Warriors had bad players. They actually had good scorers who fit the very style that the franchise was known for. During the 2000s, they fielded names like Anton Jamison, Jason Richardson, and Baron Davis. They were making three-pointers and running the floor way before those things became trends in the league. But it was an entirely different era with a different style. So, as fun as the Warriors were to watch, they weren't anywhere close to title contention. They couldn't even make the playoffs. The struggles the Warriors went through for decades were confusing because this squad was playing for a big market in the San Francisco Bay Area. If you know your NBA history, teams playing in big markets and big cities usually have the advantage against smaller teams because free agents are more likely to play for them. Big market teams also tend to have higher valuations, allowing them to afford facilities, personnel, and other luxuries that should attract big-name players or help the team improve. That's why the Warriors weren't close to being the most valuable franchise in the league. To put things into perspective, the most successful team of the early 2000s, the Los Angeles Lakers, was worth $447 million in 2004. The New York Knicks, who were successful during the 90s but bad during the 2000s, were worth $400 million the same year. Meanwhile, the Warriors were valued at $188 million. That's not bad at all if you take it at face value. But the Warriors were worth less than half the Knicks, even though both teams weren't exactly successful that decade. When compared to franchises playing for smaller cities, that number is even more surprising. In 2004, the Cleveland Cavaliers were worth $258 million. That's probably the LeBron James effect there, but the Cavs were already worth more than the Warriors a year ago, before LeBron joined them. The interesting part here is that the Warriors have always been in one of the most valuable markets in the world. Northern California's population may not be large, but it's the tech capital of the country. On the other hand, a city like Cleveland has always been on the lower end of the mid-sized market list. But mid-sized market teams still had higher valuations compared to the Warriors. Basically, the Warriors were in an odd position because the team did not bring much value, or at the very least, did not live up to its potential value. A lot of that had to do with the fact that the team was struggling to win games. More importantly, the Warriors did not have that one player who brought media attention and more fans to the team. Yes, during the latter half of the 2000s, the Warriors saw a short resurgence with the We Believe squad that ran a free-flowing run-and-gun offense. This very same team defeated the top-seeded Dallas Mavericks in 2007 when it returned to the playoffs from an 11-year absence in the postseason. But the team was once again bad after that, failing to make the playoffs from 2008 to 2012. However, the failures and mediocre performances were necessary for the eventual growth of this franchise because they had placed them in the best possible position to draft a true franchise-changing superstar. Chapter 2: Stephen Curry and the Three-Pointer. Well, the Golden State Warriors were struggling to make a name for themselves during the 2000s, making the playoffs only once from 1995 to 2009. There was a young star making a name for himself in college. Old-school fans were already familiar with the Curry family name because Del Curry was one of the best shooters and role players in the NBA during the 90s. But Stephen Curry was taking the entire country by storm because he was torching the collegiate ranks with his scoring. During his junior season, Curry was a national sensation because he led the country in scoring while playing for Dayton, a smaller program. His outside shooting was something the world had never seen before because he was hitting long shots at a volume and efficiency that was magical to watch. But as good as he was in college, his lack of size and athleticism held him back during the 2009 draft. No one saw him as a top 5 pick, although everyone thought he was going to get drafted in the top 10. The Golden State Warriors, who had the 7th pick of the draft, were already eyeing Curry. But they had stiff competition because the Minnesota Timberwolves were drafting 5th and 6th. Instead of taking Curry, the Wolves took Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn. The New York Knicks, drafting 8th, were hoping to get Curry. Steph also wanted to go to New York because it was still the biggest market in the world. Someone of Curry's star caliber would have become an instant sensation with the Knicks. But the Warriors completed the heist of the century when they drafted Curry 7th overall. Now, a lot of people found this decision odd because the Warriors already had Monta Ellis at the backcourt. Ellis wasn't a point guard, but he was a small guard who gave up size on the defensive end. Curry was similar. No one saw him as a true point guard. On top of that, he was too small, unathletic, and skinny to be guarding bigger, stronger, and more athletic NBA-level guards. But the Warriors still saw this as the best choice to make. And it turned out they drafted quite arguably the most important player in the NBA during the 21st century. Well, Curry didn't turn into an instant sensation overnight, but he brought fun and excitement back to the Warriors. People now had more reasons to watch this team because it was fun and full of potential. Curry's ability to hit the three-pointer was slowly changing the team's style, all while influencing the rest of the NBA. Back then, the three-pointer was more of an extra weapon teams could use instead of being a team's go-to offensive option. But Curry was steadily changing that. Then, the Warriors were ready to go all in on Steph. They traded Monta Ellis in 2012 to not only free the backcourt for Curry, but also to allow the rookie Klay Thompson to step into the starting shooting guard spot. The Splash Brothers duo was born. But the Warriors still had a long way to go before becoming championship contenders. Despite struggling to win games during the early 2010s, the Warriors laid the foundations of its rise as one of the greatest franchises in the NBA. And everything started with the Stephen Curry draft in 2009, as it eventually led to the rise of a dynasty. Chapter 3: The Rise of a Dynasty. The Golden State Warriors were on the rise during the 2010s. It may have all started when they drafted Curry in 2009, but the cogs started moving in 2010 when the previous owner, Chris Cohan, decided to sell the Golden State Warriors to Peter Guber and his partner Joe Lacob. The sale was brought about by the financial crisis in the late 2000s, as Cohan was facing financial problems and tax evasion issues. He sold the Warriors for $450 million, which was a record value at that point in history. Most people would attribute this large valuation to the increasing value of the NBA as a whole, instead of to the actual increase in value of the Warriors franchise. In fact, according to Forbes, the Warriors were actually worth less than they were in 2009, as this was a rare instance of an NBA team dropping in value. but the valuation drop was more of a product of the financial crisis. Still, the sale to Goober and Lacob was one of the more important events in the history of this franchise. Unlike Cohan, this new ownership group had a mission of putting together a championship team. The moves that the Warriors made between 2011 and 2015 eventually allowed the team to make its long-awaited playoff return. In 2013 and 2014, the team was gutsy during the playoffs. They were fighting hard while hitting three-pointers, but they didn't look like championship contenders. But the ultimate decision of bringing in Steve Kerr as their new head coach ultimately changed the fortunes of this franchise. But throughout that time, Stephen Curry was rising as one of the best players in the league. He had already become a household name. Curry was now an icon because of his three-point shooting. No one in the NBA was doing the things he was doing as a shooter. Curry was hitting long shots off the dribble and against tough defenses. His ability to stretch the floor and scare opposing defenses with his volume efficiency as a shooter was part and parcel of the rise of the Warriors as an overall threat. Kerr's system allowed Steph to thrive alongside his teammates because they were moving the ball around, hitting the open man with great passes, and taking the best available shots. Other guys like Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Andre Iguodala were also doing their part on both ends of the court. But there was no doubt that Steph was the vital cog of that Warriors machine. They not only took the league by storm, but thoroughly dominated their way to 67 wins in 2015. Curry went on to win his first Most Valuable Player award, which he rightfully deserved because of his numbers and impact. But the ultimate reward came during the 2015 finals when the Golden State Warriors won the NBA championship for the first time in 40 years. This was the culmination of all the moves this team made since acquiring Curry in 2009. It all paid off because a championship is always the ultimate sign of an NBA franchise's success. And it was all thanks to how this franchise built a dominant winning culture around Stephen Curry. There were a lot of factors that led to the rise of the Warriors as the next great dynasty in the NBA. Curry's rise to superstardom was only one of them. But Steph's magnetic personality and playing style were the most vital part of the Golden State Warriors' rapid growth as one of the most valuable teams in the NBA. Chapter 4: The Stephen Curry Effect. To put things into perspective, the Golden State Warriors were worth $335 million in 2009, the year they acquired Stephen Curry. The Los Angeles Lakers were worth nearly $600 million. Meanwhile, the Knicks were only slightly more valuable than the Lakers. However, ever since the Warriors' new ownership group took over during Curry's rise as a star in the early 2010s, they went through a massive growth. By 2014, at $750 million, the Warriors were worth more than double their value in 2009. This value, however, ballooned to $1.3 billion in 2015 as the franchise reached the billion-dollar mark for the first time in team history. The new ownership group more than got back their money's worth because the Warriors not only won a title in 2015, but also became a billion-dollar organization. The massive increase in value, however, was more of a product of the growth of the NBA as a whole instead of Curry's doing. From 2014 to 2015, the league saw an overall growth of 74%, the highest in the history of the NBA. The massive growth was a product of new TV deals, more endorsement opportunities, and the increasing reach of the league. After all, the world was in the middle of a huge media growth, with things like social media and streaming taking over. Naturally, the NBA was going to go through a sharp increase in its valuation. But that 2015 growth was only the start of a massive increase in value for the Golden State Warriors. The driver of the organization's growth, of course, is none other than Stephen Curry. During the 2015-16 season, the Warriors made history when they won a new NBA record of 73 wins, with Curry becoming the first ever unanimous NBA MVP. Though they failed to win the title in 2016, no one could ever imagine that the Warriors could achieve such a huge feat with a 6'2" skinny point guard leading the charge. And with the Warriors' rise as the most dominant team in the league, especially with the addition of Kevin Durant in 2016, the rest of the basketball world followed. People were watching basketball, the Warriors specifically, because of how entertaining the game had become. Curry was changing the game by showing everyone the power of the three-pointer and how it could lead to championships. Everyone else in the world started shooting three-pointers. Kids grew up watching the NBA, not wishing they could become LeBron James, but dreaming they were Steph Curry. While people still shouted Kobe when shooting paper balls into trash bins, younger folks were shouting Curry when they were sniping from beyond the three-point line. It was an effect the league had never seen before. The last time someone had this kind of an impact on the game was when Michael Jordan was ruling the NBA. Not even Kobe or LeBron, as successful and great as their careers are, had the same kind of magnetism and reach that Curry did. Younger players who were making their way to the league were now playing more like Curry instead of Kobe or Jordan. The impact was undeniable, and the numbers showed just how massive Steph's value was to the NBA. It also helped that the Warriors had Durant, one of the most popular players of that generation. With Durant's fan base and media attention going to the Bay Area, the Warriors' value continued to balloon. Before 2016, there were about a handful of teams, including the Lakers, Knicks, Rockets, and Nets, who were more valuable than the Warriors. But the rise of the super team in Golden State turned this franchise into one of the most valuable organizations in the league. At that time, only the Lakers, Knicks, and Celtics were more valuable, and those are teams whose values were already big before the boom in 2015 because they've built their value steadily by relying on their histories and strong fan base. But the Warriors, meanwhile, continued climbing up the ladder during the latter half of the 2010s, all because of Stephen Curry. Now, a lot of people talk about his impact, and it's clear that he's the most impactful player in the history of this organization in terms of its winning culture. But his impact goes beyond what happens on the court. There is no player more relatable than Curry. People can only dream of becoming Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James. After all, not everyone can be tall and athletic. On the other hand, Curry represents the everyday man and the kid who dreams of becoming an NBA player one day. One look at him and you wouldn't think he's one of the greatest players the league has ever seen because he's not tall, big, or athletic. But his mastery of the three-point shot made everyone in the world think, if he can do it, I can do it too. That's why there's always something incredibly magnetic about Curry's persona and playing style. People are drawn to him because they want to watch the greatest shooter in the world do his thing. While other superstars get booed by fans from different cities, Curry gets cheered on by everyone, especially when he's hitting impossible shots from beyond the arc. That's the type of magnetism he has, and it's also the reason why the Golden State Warriors' value has been increasing since winning their first title. Curry's popularity brought in revenues from merchandise sales, TV deals, sponsorships, and advertisements, all wanting to capitalize on one of the most popular basketball players on the planet. On top of that, constant deep playoff runs from 2015 to 2019 increased revenues from ticket sales. By 2019, the Warriors already had 3 championships during the Curry era. The franchise value had ballooned to $3.5 billion, more than 10 times its value when Steph first joined the team 10 years ago. At that point, only the Lakers and the Knicks were more valuable than the Warriors. But it was clear that the Warriors were not yet done growing. This was already a dynasty because the team went to 5 straight NBA Finals and went on to win 3 championships. And the next step for this team was to become an empire. Chapter 5. From Dynasty to Empire. The Golden State Warriors had a momentous event at the start of the 2019-2020 season when they moved to their new state-of-the-art arena, the Chase Center in San Francisco. This marked the end of their run in the Oracle Arena in Oakland, where they played from 1971 to 2019. The move to San Francisco would not have been possible if the Warriors' value had not increased dramatically since the start of the Curry era. Moving to San Francisco also represented a different kind of growth for the Warriors. They were now targeting a more affluent fan base. Oakland had rabid fans who were proud of their Warriors. However, Oakland residents tend to be on the lower end of the income bracket. Meanwhile, the new arena attracted fans who were closer to San Francisco and had higher spending powers. More than that, the move to San Francisco represented the ownership group's confidence in the team's earning capacity. Chase Center cost $1.4 billion to build, but they have $3 billion in contractually obligated revenues tied to Chase Center, meaning they're going to earn at least $3 billion from the new arena. So despite the Warriors struggling to win games during the 2019-2020 season, with Curry and Thompson out with injuries and Durant moving to Brooklyn, the franchise's value continued to soar. By 2020, the Warriors were only $100 million less valuable than the Lakers. And that's with LeBron James leading the Lakers to a championship in 2020. Only the Knicks were now more valuable than the Warriors. With Curry's return during the 2020-2021 season, ticket sales soared once more, allowing the Warriors to not only get back on the winning track, but also earn more revenue. While the pandemic naturally affected the Warriors' growth, it still soared to $5.6 billion in terms of its franchise value in 2021. The only team more valuable than the Warriors was the New York Knicks at $5.8 billion. But because the Knicks didn't have a true superstar who not only attracted attention but also led them to playoff wins, it was only a matter of time until the Warriors would overtake them. The 2021-22 season saw a lot of memorable moments for the Warriors. First, Stephen Curry broke the all-time record for career three-pointers made. Everyone in the league was anticipating him breaking the record, turning every Warriors game into a must-see spectacle. He finally broke it in December in Madison Square Garden in New York, as even the Knicks fans were cheering him on. Next, Klay Thompson returned to the lineup after 2 straight seasons of absence due to injuries. Thompson's return powered the fan base, especially with the Warriors in a good position to win a championship. Of course, the deep playoff run capped off 2022 for the Golden State Warriors as they won their 4th championship in the Curry era, with Steph raising the Finals MVP trophy for the first time in his career. Everything in the Bay Area had turned to gold that season. By 2022, the Warriors had more than surpassed both the Lakers and the Knicks in revenue from ticket sales and merchandise. They earned $750 million during the 2021-2022 season alone. The Lakers, meanwhile, had $500 million in revenue. On top of that, the Warriors topped the league in almost every revenue category outside of local media. So in 2022, the Golden State Warriors reached a total value of $7 billion, a $1.4 billion increase from their value a season ago. On the other hand, the Lakers sat on $5.9 billion. Meanwhile, New York was at $6.1 billion. The Warriors not only overtook the 2 most valuable franchises in the history of the NBA, but thoroughly demolished their valuation by a mile. Despite the tough season they faced during the 2022-23 campaign, the Warriors continued to earn more than everyone else. They had a revenue of $764 million as opposed to the $558 million and $536 million earned by the Los Angeles Lakers and New York Knicks respectively. The Warriors soared to $7.7 billion. In 2023, they were still the only franchise worth at least $7 billion. Curry also surpassed LeBron as the most watched NBA player on the planet. During the 2023-24 season, Stephen Curry remained a must-see player because he was putting up great numbers and shooting the lights out at an advanced age. Although the Warriors failed to make it to the playoffs, the organization's value broke the $8 billion mark. They are now valued at $8.2 billion, the most valuable franchise in all of the NBA. Meanwhile, both the Knicks and the Lakers are valued at around $7.4 billion. There are also a lot of numbers that show just how incredible this growth has been for the Warriors. This franchise is now only second behind the Dallas Cowboys in terms of the world's most valuable sports franchises. The $8.2 billion valuation has plenty of drivers, including the expensive arena. But the Warriors' sponsors and endorsement deals have also helped in increasing the team's value. They have the largest jersey patch sponsorship deal, with Japanese e-commerce giant Rakuten paying them $45 million a year. They also led the league in Instagram followers at 32.6 million, making it clear that its social media reach is higher than any other team in the league. Then there's the fact that the Warriors have grown 49.1 times its value from 1996 to 2021, the largest in any major sport in America. Now, a lot of people would say that the growth has been a product of the Warriors' incredible business moves and the league's overall growth. After all, the NBA is becoming a more global sport, reaching different parts of the world because of the internet and social media. There's also the rise of sports betting, which exponentially increased the NBA's value ever since the league became more active in promoting its sports betting partners. But you also have to consider the fact that it isn't a coincidence that the Warriors' largest valuation growths happened during the Stephen Curry era. The Warriors franchise grew more than 24 times its value from 2009, the year Curry joined the league. Meanwhile, the team grew more than 6 times its amount in 2015 when it won its first title in the Curry era. In comparison, the Lakers have grown 12.5 times since 2009. They had Kobe from 2009 to 2016 and LeBron from 2018 to the present. Not even two of the biggest stars in history exceeded Curry's impact on the growth of the Warriors. If you look at all the sponsorships, partnerships, and business investments the Warriors have made since 2009, it's clear that none of those things would have happened if it weren't for Curry. Would you really want to spend millions of dollars of advertising expenses on the Warriors if they didn't have the most popular player on the planet playing for them? So, as much as you would give a ton of credit to the ownership group for leading this franchise's massive growth, none of that would have happened if Curry was not driving fans, media attention, sponsorships, and championship victories into the franchise. With that, it's clear that Stephen Curry's shooting hand is the real hand of Midas. From championship wins to the franchise's growth, Curry's hand turns everything into gold. This Warriors team is now a massive empire built on its franchise star's golden touch. And it's clear that the organization is undoubtedly banking on his massive impact as much as they can until he eventually retires from the game.